Okay, thank you all for coming. We'll start the meeting off with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good, thank you all for coming. We're going to start off with a conditional use hearing. We will take public input a little bit later on through it, but I'm going to turn it over to our solicitor so that he can start the proceeding.
Thank you very much. My name is Tim Wachter. I'm the solicitor for Summit Township. I am here on the dais with the Board of Supervisors, comprised of Mark Welka, Jack Lee, and Tony Davis, Township Secretary Lisa Bellamont, Zoning Administrator Tammy Cass, and Township Engineer Matt Jonas. Also joining us today is Attorney Philip Seaver Hall, who's seated over here to my left, who's assisting us today in the preparation of the final determination from this hearing. This hearing is being stenographically recorded by Ms. Cecilia Mahana. I ask that Ms. Mahana take the opportunity to swear in anyone who believes that they may present testimony here today. So this is specifically on the hearing for the cell tower application for GPD. If you're here to give public comment on any other issue during the regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors, that will become next. You don't need to get sworn in for that. But if you intend to present some sort of testimony or comment either in favor or in opposition of the application for cell tower, I ask that you be sworn in.
If you'd all raise your right hands, please. Do you and each of you swear or affirm the testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please answer by saying, I do.
I do.
Thank you very much. As we stated, we're here today for a conditional use hearing, Appendix 2 to the Summit Township zoning ordinance, which governs the process for approval of wireless communications facilities, provides that any applicant proposing construction of a new tower-based wireless communications facility outside of the public right-of-way shall submit plans to the township for review by the township staff and planning commission and for approval by conditional use of the Township Board of Supervisors. Today, the applicant is GPD Group, which is the agent for, I believe it's AT&T Wireless. The applicant requests a conditional use approval for the construction of a 170-foot tower at 8990 Peach Street, parcel number 40-019 083.0-010.03. The parcel is zoned Resources Rural. The applicant submitted their application on April 27, 2022. The matter was reviewed by the Planning Commission on July 11 of 2022, and through a vote of 5-0, the Planning Commission did not recommend approval of the application. The conditional use hearing was originally scheduled for July 18th of 2022 before the Board of Supervisors. The applicant requested that the hearing then be tabled or rescheduled. A second hearing was scheduled for August 15th of 2022, but had to be rescheduled due to a defective notice. Now today we have convened at the municipal building for this hearing. The hearing was advertised in the Erie Times News on August 22nd and 29th. The properties were posted on August 23rd of 2022, and letters were sent to properties within 1,000 feet of the proposed site on August 23rd of 2022. The purpose of this hearing is to allow the supervisors to thoroughly examine the proposed land use to determine compliance with the objective standards and criteria contained in the ordinance, to assure that the public interest is not violated, and if the application does not meet those objective standards and criteria, the supervisors may attach any reasonable conditions or safeguards necessary to implement the purpose of the ordinance. The applicant, of course, has the burden of proving that the proposed use meets the objective requirements of the ordinance. And as such, the applicant will be given the opportunity to present any evidence and testimony that they so desire. The supervisors will be given the opportunity to ask any questions or to probe any portion of their application or testimony. Following that, if any objectors are present, or anyone else who wants to speak in favor of the application, they may then offer testimony or present evidence regarding their position as to whether the application should be approved or whether the proposed use would be detrimental to the health, safety, or general welfare. And the supervisors will again be given an opportunity to question anyone who else testifies. The applicant will be given the opportunity to respond to any credible claims raised by the objectors to show that the intended use would not violate the health, safety, and general welfare of the community with relation to those objections. Following the hearing, the supervisors will issue a written final determination, which will have to first be approved by the supervisors. The supervisors would have until September 24th of 2022 to issue that final determination. That is because the statute and our ordinance requires that a determination be made 150 days after the application. The application was submitted on April 27th of 2022. However, as this matter was initially delayed due to the applicant's request to table the hearing, I'm requesting, if the applicant would so desire, to approve an extension until October 31st, just to allow us to make sure that we get this out with a quality product. Is that something you would agree to, sir?
Yes.
Okay, if it could be noted that the applicant has agreed to an extension until October 31st of 2022. Now, before I ask, actually, if I can ask you to, the applicant to come to the podium and introduce yourself, and then before you present, I want to have one more item of housekeeping taken care of.
Okay. My name is Mike Beto with GPD Group, 520 South Main Street, Akron, Ohio.
And could you spell your last name?
It's B-E-D-D-O-W.
And thank you very much. And you're the one, just for purposes of the record, you're the one who agreed to the extension until October 31st, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And if we could just get one piece of housekeeping cleaned up, one more piece before we get started. In the application that was submitted to the township, you had identified on that document, you had included a copy of the Summit Township zoning map, in which you had identified the parcel that this proposed tower was to be located. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that map that you had included had a date, approval date of April of 2017, and had identified the property as being located on an agricultural parcel, zoned A1, correct?
Correct.
Up here on the board behind us, we have a copy of the zoning map. You can scroll down and show the approval date. Down in the lower right-hand corner, there's an approval date of June 21st of 2021. If you could scroll back to the view that you had, Tammy, thank you. Can you identify where the parcel is? We're identifying where the parcel,
Yes.
where the tower is to be located.
Yes.
And Tammy, if you could scroll back down to the color coding. I just want to note that this parcel is zoned as resources rural.
Right.
And that back in April of 2021, the property was rezoned as resources rural, so it's not zoned agricultural. So just a point of clarification.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
As mentioned, we're proposing a new cell tower. It's 170 feet. There's a fenced compound around it. It'll be gravelled. That compound is to house AT&T's equipment, and then down the road, any future carriers, if they want to come in, obviously their equipment will go there as well. There's a 4-foot lightning rod that's going to be placed on the tower.
I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty hearing you. Can you speak up a bit? There's no mic on.
I was just gonna say, nobody can hear you. Is there a mic back there?
I don't know, but it's very difficult to
Is that mic
hear
working?
you.
We're gonna pass the mic. I'm gonna steal yours. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Would you like me to start over?
Yes, I would
Okay.
appreciate
No,
that.
that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyways, as mentioned, AT&T is proposing to install a 170-foot cell tower here, 4-foot lightning rod on top. There will be a fenced gravel compound that will house AT&T's equipment. The tower will provide opportunities for future co-location of other carriers, T-Mobile, Verizon, whatever that may be. And in addition, their equipment could be placed inside the compound. We are approximately 1,700 feet off the road, just trying to get away from the right-of-way there to kind of minimize the visual impact that this tower is going to place on the surrounding neighborhood. The tower itself is placed greater than 1,500 feet away from any nearby residences, which I believe is a requirement of the zoning ordinance. As mentioned, it was kind of brought to our attention just today that the parcel had been rezoned. So we are not, I guess, meeting the setback requirements currently as it stands. I think we're approximately 60 feet away from the property line there. The code requires 200 feet, I believe, from residential properties, which is what the property to the north is. If that's an issue, I guess we would like to request a variance from that, or the opportunity to relocate the tower. I guess I will leave that up to you guys if you do choose to approve this tower. This tower is located in this particular location to provide coverage in the area. There is an AT&T, or rather a tower to the north and south that AT&T is currently on, providing coverage in those areas. There's a gap in coverage very close to where we've put the tower here. I know that the code prefers co-locations, which we did look at. There are several more towers to the north, I believe in the range of 0.7, 0.8 miles to the north. We did look at those as mentioned. The issue with those towers is they place us very close to the towers to the north we're currently on. There's overlapping coverage in those spots. If we were to choose to co-locate in those towers, it would be further gaps to the south, at which point we would look in the future to fill those gaps anyway with some other tower, other potential solution to fill that gap in coverage. So what we're trying to do here is provide a single tower to fill that gap in coverage, provide future opportunities for other co-locators. All your other carriers are looking at very similar situations with the towers in north and south as far as what they would be able to co-locate on. So we're providing an opportunity for them to likewise fill any gaps in coverage they may have. So hopefully there would be limited need for other future towers in the area. I do know in the conditional use hearing came up several times. There were concerns with safety at the airport to the southwest. We have a letter from the FAA stating that they have, if we reduce the tower height to 174 feet, that they would find no adverse effects, which is what we've done. We were initially coming in with a 185-foot tower, and they stated that would potentially cause issues, so we did reduce the 11 feet to kind of comply with the FAA's requirements. I do know there were several other things brought up as far as the airport being able to maintain its license. The FAA isn't in the business of shutting down airports, so I don't think there's any concern there. The FAA is there to protect air traffic, so to put an airport out of business is not what they're trying to do here. Likewise, it was mentioned that a tower puts off a magnetic field. That is also not true. There's no magnetic field generated by the tower that's going to draw any balloons or gliders or planes or anything of the sort.
I'm sorry, it's not going to what? I'm having trouble.
It's not gonna draw any gliders or balloons or any other aircraft towards the tower. Beyond that, again, as I mentioned, we've kind of located this off the property. We're in a densely wooded area to try to kind of disguise not disguise, but I guess just kind of shield the tower from the public view. We aren't currently putting any arborvitae around it, as the code mentions. That's simply just because we are in such a heavily wooded area. Other than that, I just, would like to request your approval on this. If there are any conditions that you guys would like to see, we're open to that. As mentioned, I know we've not met the setback requirement there. If it's just a simple matter of moving the tower, we're open to that.
Question?
Supervisors, any questions? I have a few. I'd like to.
Okay.
I'm good.
Tanya?
No, not right now.
Thank you.
If I can ask a few questions, so before we move forward. How far is the proposed edge of the cell tower confinement area from the property borders?
It's a good question. The fence itself is approximately 4 feet from the property line.
Do you have a copy of the FAA letter
I do.
you referred to? Please. Thank you. And so we would accept this letter, and I'm going to write on it as applicant exhibit 1.
That's fine.
And is this, I haven't had an opportunity to review the letter, is the determination of the FAA it appears to be contingent upon the current location of the
Yes.
tower?
Yes. And that's the letter, the response letter that they issued to us. We had submitted for the 185-foot tower. They came back, and in that response, they stated if we dropped to 174, there would be no adverse effect, and they could issue a favorable decision.
But the location of the tower kind of on the horizontal plane throughout the property.
Right, yeah, that is for the specific location.
For the specific, so if there was a redesign or reapplication, it would require a new letter from the FAA.
Correct.
With respect to the co-location requirement, you had indicated that there are several towers within 0.7 to 0.8 miles,
Yes.
whatever the number is, it doesn't really matter. Did you reach out to speak to any of those tower owners or operators?
We did not reach out to them for the fact that they didn't provide a beneficial coverage for us to fill in that gap.
You spoke about not including arborvitae around the fenced area to the wooded location. Is there any stealth technology that you intend to utilize in the construction of the tower to limit how visual it is? I mean, for the the length of the tower?
Right.
The height of the tower, I guess we would say.
Not at this time. Doing, you know, your fake trees and stuff tends to
I'm
be
sorry,
likely.
I cannot, I'm just having difficulty.
Sorry.
Just put my voice up.
You're right. Yeah, no, not at this time. We found that stealth technologies tend to be more of a distraction than a camouflaging technology. They, you know, would be up above the height of the trees, and at that point, they tend to stick out like a sore thumb.
Regarding the fall requirements for this particular tower, how is that designed in the event it was to collapse?
Right now, the tower isn't designed. They do have, a lot of the tower manufacturers have options where they can specifically design a tower to fail at a certain location, to provide some sort of fall radius. We don't have that in works now. That would be I guess a contingent point of the approval. We could provide that letter that would state that it would fall within such and such a radius.
So we don't know with it being designed with the screened, the fenced area at 4 feet from the property line. We don't know what would happen if it was to fall, because as you said, it hasn't been designed yet, so we don't know.
It hasn't been, but we can dictate to the tower manufacturer what that radius would need to be. So if it needs to be, you know, within the property, that's something that we could do. These towers are designed though, just like any other commercial structure, to not fail. I mean, you wouldn't put a skyscraper up and say, okay, well, it has to fall within its footprint. So we tend not to do that. If that is a requirement, we can meet that.
You had suggested, because we didn't realize let me clarify one statement you had made earlier, just for purposes of the record. You had stated in your presentation that you're not able to meet the setback today because of the realization that you had designed this and made application using an old zoning map. Is that correct?
Correct.
And if we could just explore that further so everybody knows what we're talking about for purposes of the record. There's a requirement in the ordinance that says no tower-based wireless communications facility shall be located within a residential district, which this is not, or within 200 feet of a lot in residential use or a residential district boundary. And so when we had realized that we had the wrong designation in there because of the use of the old map, we then also realized that in the new map, the property that is directly, we'll call it to the north, we'll say the common north as opposed to magnetic north, is no longer zoned in an agricultural use, which is what it was zoned in the prior map, but now is zoned in a residential capacity. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so when you say that it's 4 foot from the property line, it would be 4 foot to that line to the north, which would be the residential property.
Correct.
Okay. So if there was a variance to be granted, which I think we need to, we'll talk about that in a second. If there was to be a variance to be granted, you'd be needing a 196 foot variance.
Okay.
Although for the record, any variances that would be granted would be variances from general setbacks would have to be granted by the zoning hearing board, and here this is a safety requirement that the supervisors had implemented. So I'm not sure that supervisors would even have the ability to waive this particular grant a variance from this, as it's not a standard setback requirement. There is standard setback requirements in the ordinance that says if a new antenna supporting structure is constructed, the minimum distance between the base of the support structure and any property line shall be the largest of the following: 50% of the antenna height, or the minimum front yard setback in the underlying zoning district, or 40 feet. So I had asked a question earlier of what was the distance between the fence and the property line. What is the distance from the base of the antenna structure and the property line would be my next question.
Approximately 60 feet. I could give you a better answer, look at the drawings, but I think that gives us a good kind of base point here.
So with a 174-foot antenna, which is the 170-foot antenna plus the 4-foot lightning rod, half of that is 87 feet. I'm no lawyer, I don't do math. That's why I went to law school, right? But 87 feet. So in any event, you would need some sort of a relief from that requirement as well.
Right.
And that was as submitted. Okay. So do you have anything further you'd like to submit?
I do not.
Do you have multiple copies of this letter?
I also do not. I can email them if you'd like.
Okay. That's all right. We can make copies. I just want to make sure that we get a copy to the reporter here today before she leaves so that it can be included as part of the record. We will maintain copies of this, and we'll make a copy here before. Can we do that? Okay. Nothing from the supervisors?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, stick around. So now would be the point, if there's anybody else, was there anyone, let's do this in an orderly fashion. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application? Seeing that no one has raised their hand, is there anyone here who objects to the application? All right, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. Is there, are any of you part of a common group, or you all have your individual objections?
Individual and common.
Okay, so, but we're not an organized group. That's my question. Okay, very good. Well, let's start over here with the gentleman in the orange shirt.
Boy.
You're the lucky one today. If you could please give your name and address.
Bob Stewart, 7300 Old Perry Highway. Now, the first thing is that most people in this room know I'm a pilot, so I'm on that side. I'm also on the Summit Township Hearing Board, so I must be on that side. I'm going to try to be objective and let people think about this rationally, okay? Now, I'll start off by saying, personally, I don't care whether the tower goes in or not. But if it does go in, and there is an accident, okay? Some guy from New England's coming in with his wife and baby, and in the bad weather, he hits the tower. The township said, can't sue us. FAA said it was okay. Everybody else says, well, no, the FAA says, you know, as council would know, in today's culture, everybody sues everybody about everything. Okay? And having said that, you might win, meaning you don't have to pay any money. But can you win in the court of public opinion? When the newspaper's there and the cameras are there saying, look what you did to that family. Okay, you put a tower, you, the township, are supposed to protect its citizens and its visitors, and you put a tower at the end of a runway. Okay? You sell your cars based on safety. You put a tower at the end of a runway. You may win, but not in the court of public opinion. Okay? So what I would say to you is, what are the chances of that happening? Very slim. Probably win the lottery, right? But it could. What's more likely to happen? Some student pilot on a windy day clips his wing, turns his airplane in, gets a couple broken bones and a concussion. Is he going to sue? Yeah. Do you want to be, even though not legally responsible for that, but maybe morally responsible for that? So, having said that, I've got a ton of hours flying in and out of that airport. And I flew in there just the other day, made an approach. That tower's not going to bother me. Some young kid looking at the tower may take his eyes off his landing. All right? So I will end this by simply saying, think about all of the possibilities. Think about not what you think can or can't happen, but reality, okay? Because once again, I'll fly in there on a nice, calm, sunny day, all right? So I don't care personally whether the tower goes there or not. But think about all of the possibilities that could happen, okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much. If I may point out for the supervisors that the standard here is that the mere possibility of an adverse impact is not sufficient for a denial, but however, we must show that there is a high probability that the proposed use will generate a harm greater than normally generated by that type of use. And so, while the points are well taken, the legal standard is that we have to have a bit of a higher probability that the proposed use will generate a harm generally than normally, will generate a harm greater than normally generated. Next, gentlemen, the gray, we're going to work back forward. How about that? Yes, you're next.
Tim Will, 2255 Dorn Road. Just a neighbor of the adjoining property. Just maybe to make you think a little bit, it is a third generation business that is in the township. I don't know how many of those we have. I hate to see it get extinguished. It's a recreational thing. And as Bob said, on ideal conditions, I think it would be a possibility or could be a possibility, but not, do we all know this is one of the highest points in Erie County. And it does and would opt to adverse weather conditions in a blink. The helicopter has landed up there in adverse conditions down north, and so there's a possibility of them landing up there too. And if that's an issue with an emergency helicopter, I would think that we wouldn't want to add that to the equation. It is a family-oriented business. I think that's real valuable for us as citizens of the township. We also, as was stated, it was a unanimous planning commission recommendation to not let it go. I think that's, and I think you guys have to listen to the planning commission once in a while. Not all the time, but I think this is an important time that you do. And as the fellow was in support of the tower, there are other towers there that they can use. During that planning commission meeting, though, he said that they can use it, but it costs them money. So it's a money thing. I understand business, I'm in business, but also I think we need to think of all realms of that also. And a variance is if there's no other reason or no other place that can be used. And if there's other towers in that ability, then I think we at least have to recognize that those towers can be used also. I think that's it. Thanks for your time.
Gentleman that was sitting next to him.
Todd Will, 2125 Dorn Road. That's my father as well. I grew up hanging out around the airstrip up there and seeing everyday activity up there. A lot of planes, gliders. We helped Jerry Boat, we'll be talking. We helped him for years with the hot air balloon, and I'm sure he'll touch base on that more, but balloons are a completely different animal than aircraft as far as being able to steer and maneuver them. I think also, like my dad said, that third generation business, family living up there, what they do, I think there's very little of that left in this world. Those things are disappearing all the time, and I think they're important to hold on to. I'd hate to make a permanent decision like this that can, even if it doesn't shut them down per se, like the FAA says, I think it could scar their strip, label it as a potential dangerous area to land, could be for like a new pilot. I'm just against it for those reasons. Thanks for your time.
Sir?
I wasn't scheduled to speak about the tower. I wasn't even aware of it. However,
If you could give your name and address.
Ed Trober, 1235 Ponderosa Drive. I'm a private pilot, and I built my own aircraft, and I first flew it out of that strip. And it's a convenient strip to have, and private airstrips like that are disappearing, and I would like to see them remain safe. And there's a lot of towers in that area, and when you're flying, your FAA tower already advises you of the proximity of them, and adding a tower there could be just an additional hazard, because you're watching out for the TV towers that are there, and you may not pay that close attention to that one, and especially like they stated about a student. But that's all I wanted to say, because I have used the field a lot, and I first flew my aircraft out of that strip, and I still use it. Thank you.
Okay, if I get a show of hands of people who still like to speak. Sir, in the checkered shirt.
Yeah.
You're up next.
I'm Rod Gerline from Thermal G on 9001 Hammett Road. I'd like to give each of you a folder.
So if I could point out for the record, this is two separate packets, one of which is a letter dated August 15th of 2022 to the Summit Township Supervisors, and the second of which appears to be a packet of exhibits and pictures. I would assume that is related to that correspondence, and I'm going to mark that as are you in favor or opposed?
In favor.
You're in favor of the tower?
No, I thought you meant what you're going to do there.
You're opposed to the tower. We're going to call it objector. Objector Exhibit 1. Okay.
Okay, well, I'm here tonight to address the problem with a proposed tower to be built on the Off-Road Express and Fiat Auto Express property located on Peach Street in Summit Township. I wanted to go on record that the management of Thermal G Glider Port are officially notifying Summit Township that if a permit is issued and a tower is erected on the proposed site, it will present an extreme hazardous condition to the navigable airspace around the Gerline's Thermal G Glider Port, located on 9001 Hammett Road, just west of Off-Road Express. Thermal G became a reality when our dad found the perfect farm in 1955 to make his dream glider port. We moved in the spring of '55, and as a 10-year-old boy, I thought I was in heaven, and I have felt that way every day since. That was 67 years ago. For the next year, Mom, Dad, and my brother Jay and I worked our hearts out so we could open the glider port the next summer. We did it and had our airfield license the spring of '56. We have contacted both the FAA and the Pennsylvania Bureau of Aviation, and both have made it clear that your local municipality has the authority to allow or deny structures within its boundaries. Pennsylvania Bureau of Aviation notes that every municipality is empowered to protect the airspace around public airports, much like sidewalks that shall be maintained throughout the municipality. The airspace around public airports is a public thoroughfare and should be maintained for public safety. Well, somebody will say, but the FAA study gave it no hazard report. Well, let me tell you about an FAA study. The study is conducted from a desk with all the parameters done for large airports with 6,000 to 10,000 foot runways with large heavy airline traffic, which lines up 10 miles out and flies a straight line to the end of the runway and departs in the same manner. The FAA has nothing in their regulations for private public use grass strips used by general aviation. Then look at a sport aviation airport like the Thermal G, who caters to gliders and sailplanes, hot air balloons, paraplanes and ultralights, and light fixed-wing aircraft, all of which fly the perimeter of the field in the approach for landing. Then remember, gliders and sailplanes have no motor, so you have one shot only. Then throw in an emergency rope brake on tow, and the next thing you see is a pole in front of your face. Hot air balloons get eaten up by towers. That's just the way it is. I call the FAA tower studies completely bogus. How do you do a safety study without anyone from the study ever visiting the airport or proposed site? Bogus. Another interesting fact is that in the past 66 years, we have faced this problem of the possible tower structure invading Thermal G glider port airspace at least 3 times, and not once have we ever had anyone from the communications company come to see us to discuss the proposed structure. I would only be speculating on the reason for lack of communication, so I will say no more on that subject. In the 1950s, our dad developed the Airline winch, which is a ground launch system for sailplanes, and developed a training program with the winch that launches were able to be made every 10 minutes. It was such a good training program that the Air Force adopted the training program for the Air Force Academy cadets and bought 2 Airline winches. For many cadets, this was the first training in the world of flight, and it was done with a Airline winch developed right here in Summit Township. Many of those cadets went on to be pilots in the U.S. Air Force defending our country. The Thermal G has been accident-free for the past 66 years due to the fact that the management of the Thermal G and Summit Township supervisors have protected the airspace around the Thermal G for a 1-mile radius. To change this 66-year-old practice is to flirt with a future disaster, which in the end would cost Summit Township great hardship, which can be avoided. Both the Experimental Aircraft Association and the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association have been contacted about this problem, and both agree that this proposed tower would be an extreme hazard to the airspace around Thermal G. These 2 organizations are the largest general aviation groups in the U.S. Sean Elliott is EA Vice President of Advocacy and Safety. His statement of hazard is made by visiting the Thermal G many times. He knows our field. It should be remembered that the Thermal G Gladport is a real asset to our community. Over the years, it has been used in emergency situations to save lives. Due to the lake to the north, weather conditions can close Erie International in an instant with fog rolling in off the shoreline. In these cases, the medevac helicopters radio to the ground ambulance to get to the Thermal G, and the switch from the helicopter to the ambulance is made quickly and the patient is on their way. The other saves have been pilots heading home in their light fixed-wing aircraft, low on fuel, and come up to Erie and find the airport socked in with fog. Boy, are they happy to spend the night on the Thermal G and hope tomorrow clears. These are real cases of a small airport saving lives. Let me close by saying you could ask any pilot, and they all would agree. You just don't put up objects in the airspace around an airport and try to prove they're safe. They are definitely a real hazard to all flying aircraft coming and going from an airport. I really thank you for listening to me.
Mr. Chair, let me ask a few questions. Supervisors, do you have any questions before I do?
No.
I have to apologize. I'm not familiar at all with your airport. Could you walk me through a few things just so we can build the record and have a better understanding? We referred to the zoning map earlier, which is being projected behind the supervisors, behind the dais here. And we've identified the parcel that the proposed tower will be at as being right here. Where is the airport?
One over, down, south. Is that it, Jay?
Yeah, right there where the, put your finger up again.
Here's the tower.
Yeah, now move your finger just straight ahead. Straight ahead.
Above, to the left, to the
To
left.
the left.
Right there, right there.
Okay.
So it's right on our board.
So if we could let the record show that the airport is located as the parcel immediately to the west of the proposed tower location and extends well beyond the western boundaries of the parcel that would contain the tower. And could you please describe the direction of your runway?
East-west.
So it runs from the east to the west.
If you look at the boundaries of our property, you can see that it's longer from the east to the west than it is wide.
So it's on the southern portion of your property, but it extends east to west. Is that correct?
The runway, right about in the middle.
Right about in the middle. Okay,
Yeah,
very good.
yeah.
And when you take off, is there any particular direction that you take off?
East-west.
So do you take off heading?
Depends on wind.
Okay, so you either take off heading to the west or heading to the east, depending on the wind.
Yeah.
Okay. And what is the use? You alluded to it in your testimony, but if you could help me out a little more. Glider planes, how do those work?
They have no engine. So they're towed up either by a winch, which I had described, or a tow plane.
And then they're released, and I've seen movies.
They're released usually at around 2,000 feet, and then we look for lift. Okay? Have you ever watched a hawk soar?
Yes, sir.
We duplicate them. We find the lift and we climb up.
And then
we go from there to another, looking for another thermal to climb up again.
I'll keep my feet squarely on the ground. And then you find, and then you land on this runway with these gliders. So you're towed up with by another plane,
Yeah.
and then you land on the runway.
Yeah,
And you mentioned hot air balloons.
all right.
About how many hot air balloons do you have take off and or land? Well, let's not duplicate the numbers. So how many unique hot air visits, takeoff and landings do you have?
Right this minute, we have one person in the area with a hot air balloon. And it varies from one flight to a dozen,
Over how long of a period?
a year.
A year. Okay.
Yeah.
How about the gliders? How many glider flights do you think you have a year?
On a good year,
Yes.
I can tell you what we have peaked out at 60 flights a day, okay? The future does not tell whether, right this minute, we're probably down to 100 flights. But the future doesn't say that we're not going to have somebody approach us, which they have, to have a summer base and be flying a flight school out of there like we used to. And that could happen at, the future, who knows?
In Objector Exhibit 1, which, if you could do me a favor, can I have your copy? Both, if I may. So, if you could please give that to the applicant so he could see what we're talking about. Like the record reflect that we did provide a copy of Objector Exhibit 1 to the applicant so he could follow along. In the portion that has the letters, there's a couple different letters in here.
Oh, yeah.
And you have the letter from yourself, which was the top copy. And then next, you had a letter dated August 5th from EAA. I think you referenced it as the Experimental Aircraft Association, signed by Mr. Sean Elliott. And then there's a letter from the Department of Transportation speaking to aircraft hazard areas. And then you have a letter from AOPA.
Airplane Owners and Pilots Association.
Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, dated August 29th of 2022 by Mr. Sean Collins, the Eastern Regional Manager. And I want to draw your attention to that letter because I have a couple questions, and I think it relates to some of your testimony. It says that when the FAA reviews the impact of a proposed structure in accordance with Title 14 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 77, which is the same section referenced in Applicant Exhibit 1. From the FAA, the letter, it says that the Federal Aviation Administration has conducted an aeronautical study under the provisions of 49 U.S.C. Section 44718, and if applicable, Title 14 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 77. So we're talking about the same thing here. Back to the AOPA letter, it says that when the FAA reviews the impact of a proposed structure in accordance with Title 14 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 77, the FAA has no jurisdiction nor authority over individual proposals, deferring to municipal zoning boards for approval determinations. The FAA's review only considers impacts on airports only considers impacts on airports included in the National Plan of Integrated Airport Systems, NPIAS, for which O3G, which is Thermal G Airfield, is not a member. The nearest NPIAS airport is Erie International, which is 10 miles away and will not adequately consider the impact on operations onto 03G, which is Thermal G Airfield. Now, I have never seen this letter before, and I've never seen the preliminary findings from the FAA letter here before. But is your testimony and is that letter standing for the fact that this FAA determination that we received here today is for the impact on Erie International?
No.
So the
I
FAA
would
letter,
guess that study was done for our airport. It says 03G, don't it?
No, it says we're not a member of that,
Yeah.
just the airport, the big airport.
okay, so
That's
it has a reference to Thermal G Airport, so I'm understanding that better. Okay. But your testimony and the testimony and what's included in that letter is that they're doing the study on the basis of traditional aircraft and not the alternative aircraft that you discussed before?
It's not even traditional. I'm telling you, their regulations are made for commercial type airlines.
And so is it your testimony then that those regulations wouldn't apply to the use of the air, like the impact of those regulations for commercial airplanes wouldn't apply to the current use of the airport?
I'm saying that the FAA has taken no consideration for the type of aircraft and the type of field that they're doing the study on. And that nobody that's done the study and ever will has been at the Thermal G or the tower site to actually see whether it's a hazard or not. I'm sure that Summit Township does not let all these things be built in Summit Township without actually seeing the site.
So I'll ask the objector to come up and speak to that if he'd like in a few minutes. But does the, not the objector, the applicant to speak to that in a few minutes if you'd like. Do the supervisors have any more questions of this gentleman? I don't.
No.
No.
Okay, thank you. I believe we have one more individual who's interested, who's been patiently waiting here.
Very short.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Gerald Vogt. I live at 2057 Andover Lane. I'm also a property owner in Summit Township, taxpayer. If that means anything to anybody. I'm a pilot. I own 5 flying machines. 4 of those flying machines can only fly out of this little grass airport. I can tell you that tower is dangerous. It's very difficult to see the tower from the air, and it's very easy to come down on that tower. That's in the approach pattern. A lot of times when you're landing at an airport, you don't just come straight in from end to end. You come in and they do what they call traffic pattern, left hand, right hand, in order to set your proper landing up. The tower is very dangerous. Also, this gentleman testified about hot air balloon. I've been flying hot air balloons since 1979. It's a strange phenomenon.
If I could ask you just to slow down as we are trying to
Oh,
take the record. I encourage I appreciate the passion.
oh, I'm sorry. I just want to get so you guys can move on to the next subject. I've been flying hot air balloons since 1978. There's a strange phenomenon that takes place, and that is, if you get near a tower, you get sucked there just like a magnet. Now, the problem with this tower on this field is that when you take off, if the wind's blowing me in that direction, I may not have the clearance to clear that tower because I do get magnetically pulled to that tower. I have a friend that was the chief pilot for US Airways, and he really dislikes the small aircraft that I fly. He says, you don't belong anywhere near a bigger airport. And he says, you need to go somewhere else. Well, Garolines Airport is the somewhere else that we go to. And I'm saying that that tower is a big problem for us that fly these little airplanes. Thank you.
Can I ask you a quick question, if I may? Just once again, feet firmly on the ground. What's an approach pattern? You mentioned an approach pattern. Can you explain that?
Yeah, you're picking out your spot where you're going to land. And now, like Bob back here, he testified he came straight in for a landing. Now, most people, you you set up a landing. In other words, you look down in your field and you make sure, first of all, the field is clear. So if I'm doing what they call a left-hand pattern, I'm going to be coming in at 45-degree angle right where that tower is on the downwind left hand, and I'm looking down to Airlines Airport. And it's very easy for anybody, as they're setting up that landing pattern, to come down and settle right down on that tower. I'm going to tell you again, the big towers, you can see them, but these little shorter towers, when you're up flying, you cannot see those towers.
How many, when you're coming in on your approach pattern from any direction, really doesn't matter, with about as far out as that tower is, at least you're understanding where it would be, how high would you typically be?
I would be coming in from many thousands of feet, but when you get closer to the airport, you're coming down to like a traffic pattern, maybe 500 feet above the ground. So you're coming down into, but it depends on where the wind's blowing and so on. You could be a lot lower than that, a couple hundred feet, right down to where that tower is, where you're getting ready to set up. And also when you're taking off, the same thing, you're taking off and you're turning right or left, especially if you have like an engine failure and you got to get back to the airport, that tower is right in your way.
Supervisors?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the applicant, this is your shot. If you have anything that you want to say in refutation of anything that is said here, that's been said here today. So, you know, the way that this works under a conditional use hearing is that the applicant has the burden of proving that the proposed use meets the objective requirements of the ordinance. The objectors then have an opportunity to show that there's a high probability that the proposed use will generate a harm greater than normally generated by that type of use. And then if there's been sufficient evidence or testimony on specific issues regarding the health, safety, and general welfare, then the burden goes back to the applicant to show that those items, that the intended use would not violate the health, safety, and general welfare with relation to those objections. So this would be your opportunity to respond to any of those objections that you've heard. I would say that, you know, largely with respect to the location of the pattern, the use of the airport, and the applicability of the FAA study relative to the types of airplanes that are used versus the commercial ones for which the regulations, it's been testified that the regulations only pertain to commercial airplanes as opposed to these. So the floor is yours.
Okay, right, so again, I guess I just want to reiterate that we do have FAA approval here. We had that letter stating that at the 174-foot height, there wouldn't be any adverse impacts to the airport traffic. I will say that the FAA does have different regulations for different size airports. They do make considerations for smaller airports. They've got various different approach surfaces, which is essentially the slope coming in and out of the airport for larger airports versus smaller ones. So consideration has been made that this is a smaller airport here. Other than that, I really don't have much to add. Just to reiterate that we do have FAA approval here. So we want to try. We don't want an accident either. So we have gone to that step to make sure that we're in compliance with the FAA.
I have one final question on the FAA letter, and then I'll wrap it up from my end. So the document you handed, I know you said you don't have another copy, so if you want to read over my shoulder as I kind of read it into the record, trust me. Applicant Exhibit 1, this is Notice of Preliminary Findings. Initial findings of this study indicate that the structure as described exceeds obstruction standards and or would have an adverse physical or electromagnetic interference effect upon navigable airspace or air navigation facilities. That was at the 185-foot.
Correct.
Ridge. Pending resolution of these issues described below, the structure is presumed to. Pending the resolution of these issues, the structure is presumed to be a hazard to air navigation. It's worded oddly, but the resolution, it says, if the structure were reduced in height so as to not exceed 174 feet above ground level, which is 1,584 feet above mean sea level, it would not create a substantial adverse effect and a favorable determination could subsequently be issued To pursue a favorable determination at the originally submitted height, further study would be necessary. Further study entails distribution to the public for comment and may extend the study periods for up to 120 days. The outcome cannot be predicted prior to public circularization. Circularization. If you'd like the FAA to conduct further study, you may make this request within 60 days from the date of the issuance of the letter. So, have you asked for that subsequent level of approval? Because this is indicated as being a preliminary finding.
We have, it has not been received yet.
Do you know when that would be received?
I do not.
Thank you for explaining. Supervisors, anybody?
No.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Is there any other public input regarding this matter? Has there been any correspondence submitted to the supervisors?
No, sir.
Beyond that which you've already identified? As previously indicated, the supervisors would have up to 45 days in which to issue a decision. The applicant has approved an extension of that period of time until October 1st of 2022 for that decision to be issued.
30.
October 31st. It's 31 days in October. So we have that extension until October 31st of 2022. Thank you, Madam Belmont. And we, the supervisors will issue that final determination when it's ready and then vote on that whichever way it shall be. If there's nothing further, Mr. Chair, you may adjourn the hearing.
Okay, we'll adjourn the hearing. Moving on to the regular business meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from August 15th, 2022 meeting?
I'll make that motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Agenda amendments, we do have a couple. We're going to award the broadband project, take motion on it. And then we also have a change resolution numbers on the agenda from 15 and 16 to 17 and 18. That would be on items G and H. Correspondence.
So, Mr. Welker, would you be looking for a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Do I have a motion to change the agenda there?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And we'll ask that the minutes reflect these items were changed on the agenda due to the final matters relative to the broadband project being received late this morning. And the other changes were merely clerical in manner.
Correct.
And that will be highlighted on the minutes as to which ones are the amended items. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a motion for the approval of August 2022 expenses?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Old business. New business. Motion to approve or deny conditional use request for GPD Group Wireless Communication Facility, 8990 Peach Street.
Mr. Welk, I would ask that we take a motion to table this item to give us time to review the testimony that has been given here today, as well as the evidence that has been presented.
Do I have a motion to table number 7A?
I'll make a motion to table.
I'll second that motion.
Questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That was the 31st.
Correct. Table that until the 31st of October at the latest. And so anyone here who's for that item, there'll be no further discussion on that. And if you want to go home, you're more than welcome to.
Motion to approve or deny expenses for the attendance at ECAMA third quarter dinner meeting, Lisa Valmont, Michelle Nesselhoff.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to approve or deny expenses for attendance to the 2022 Roadway Management Conference, October 11th through the 13th. It's down in Wheeling, West Virginia, and be for our road foreman, Michael Hannes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second that.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to approve or deny the 2023 minimum municipal obligation of 1%. That would be for the pension.
I'll make that motion to approve.
I'll second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to approve or deny establishing trick-or-treat hours as 6 to 8 p.m. on Monday, October 31st, 2022.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion to approve or deny an additional $50,000 for GAP funding. This would be for the broadband expansion.
I believe, Mr. Welke, that would also be to award the broadband project to the successful bidder, which is part of the amendment to that item.
Thank you. And to award the broadband to the successful bidder.
I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second.
Successful bidder is?
VNet, they were the only ones to bid on the project.
Would you like to discuss the funding and where that's coming from?
Tony, you want to run with that one?
I can discuss some of the funding. We received, we need to get into the whole story, or you want the end result? The end result.
Nobody can chicken scratch.
Yeah, right. Well, so we need to service 57 more residents with broadband, high-speed internet in this township. And the bid came from VNet at a cost of $341,560. We were able to get a grant totaling $250,000 of grant money from the county. And so our portion will be $91,560. The township will have to cover. That breaks down to about $1,606 per resident or per home. So that's what we're bidding, or what we're voting on right now. Otherwise, we would have been $341,560.63 out of the township coffers. Luckily, we're not. So that's how that goes.
Any questions regarding that? Yes.
So the municipality's paying VNet to set up the poles and all the wiring,
Correct.
so they can charge the people money for their product?
Correct.
Okay.
Well,
So you're providing the infrastructure.
They're providing all the infrastructure. That would be all of their efforts to build the infrastructure.
You're paying them to set up the infrastructure, so these residents, 57 residents, can have VNet, have internet.
Correct.
so they can have broadband, it didn't matter who it was, I mean, that's the, the
Right.
big push. And the money from the what do you call it, ARP money, et cetera, was only set aside for water, sewage, and broadband at first. So broadband was where we were lacking. And we do have a lot of people in those areas that work from home, or try to work from home and can't, or, you know, with the kids from school.
It's needed, but it just seems funny, we have to pay utility to set up an infrastructure to charge us money. Does it? I mean, it just seems funny.
You would think they would want to.
Yeah, you think they would put out the infrastructure? I mean, when the gas company came in, they put their gas lines in, they charge us for it.
Yeah, I have a
It just
good
seems
point.
funny.
Thank you.
Today's world, huh?
And that should finish off all of Summit Township. We've put out many requests for anybody that doesn't have internet, and we narrowed it down to the 57, so that should complete Summit. Okay, so do I have a motion?
You have the motion in a second, now would be the time to call for the vote.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, item G, motion to approve or deny resolution 2022-17. This is MRM Trust. Lisa, could you just touch on that, Aaron?
So the resolution is approving our membership in a pooled trust for workman's compensation insurance. And they just need the approval of the supervisors to be in this pooled trust. Provides us a dividend if, of what isn't used.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve or deny resolution 2022-17?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion to approve or deny resolution 2022-18, approving a joint application with Mill Creek Township for traffic signal technologies grant. This is a grant that's offered by the Commonwealth. It's administered by PennDOT. There's no match required. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion
I'll second.
to approve.
Oh, sorry. I'll second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Land development, Tammy?
We have the Chick-fil-A amended land development plan located at 7160 Peach Street, parcel ID number 40-001-016.0-083.00, located in the mixed-use regional. The owners are proposing renovations and updates to the existing restaurant, drive-through lanes, and parking lot to improve site circulation and increase drive-through capacity. On the west side of the restaurant, the owners are proposing to construct 540 square foot addition and a 96 by 13 foot loading space. Renovations to the current drive-through include adding space for 14 additional vehicles, a canopy on the south side of the building, and various painted directional signage areas. Parking lot updates include 75 proposed parking spaces, currently 90. Various area light and signage relocations, painted directional signs, and painted crosswalks. We received this subdivision plan, the amended land development plan, on June 27th. Went in front of the Planning Commission on July 11th, and Erie County Planning on August 29th. Planning Commission did recommend approval.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve or deny amended LDP Chick-fil-A parcel 40-1-16-83?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 The next subdivision plan is the estate of Donald Van Damia, Hammett Road, Waterford, parcel ID number 40-019-083-037.01. So they're proposing to separate 10 acres of the 71 acres and conveying that portion to become an integral part of parcel ID number 40-019-083.0-037.00. So after the subdivision, the parcel will become 61.87 acres. This subdivision went in front of the plan, we received this application on June 27th. It went in front of the Planning Commission on July 11th, 2022. In front of the Erie County Planning on July 13th, 2022. The Planning Commission did recommend approval.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve or deny the Donald Van Damia subdivision plan?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And then C, are you taking it or not?
I'll take this
All
one.
right, thanks.
So this is consideration for release of the Copperleaf stormwater bond. It's probably been about a year or so since the last time we looked at it. The last time we looked at it, there was a few kind of punch list items that needed to be addressed. We'd already received the as-built drawings, the pond was functioning, but just a few punch list items that needed to be addressed, primarily a trash rack, a few of the catch basins weren't at grade yet. The level spreader was obscured by a pile of dirt, and they hadn't installed the irrigation system. So went out and verified that those punch list items have been addressed, and recommending release of the remaining of the bond.
Do you know what that amount is?
Do you want that right now?
Can't,
Okay.
I don't remember offhand, it was 10% of the original amount, so it was probably around 24,000.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve or deny the Copperleaf stormwater bond release?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Solicitor.
I'm over my allotment of words for the day.
Engineer Jonas.
So we've received numerous speeding complaints on Oliver Road and Hammett Road, and we've done speed studies, we've implemented some measures, but we wanted to make sure that we were doing the best we could with what we had. So we contacted the local technical assistance program, also known as LTAP, and LTAP is a free service to municipalities to review. So we sent on our engineering studies to them for their review and consideration. We got a report back. And in that report are some additional items that we can look into. For the most part, it was a sanity check to make sure that we are doing what we need to be doing, and no big surprises. But the big recommendation before they said to implement anything else would be to come up with a traffic calming policy for the township. So this would be a document that would be passed by resolution that would dictate the means and the methods that the township would go about instituting traffic calming. To date, most all of the traffic calming we've put in to date has been kind of safety related. We put the speed hump in at Frank Avenue to discourage the cut-through traffic and racing to get to the light at 97. And then we had the raised crosswalk that we put in on Oliver Road as a mid-block crossing for a sidewalk project. And then we put in a few of the yield pedestrian paddle signs along Hannah Road to try to slow the cars down at the intersections and draw attention to the crosswalks. But this would be kind of the implementation measures for whenever we have kind of a public outcrying for a traffic calming policy. And we're currently in the process of drafting that as quick as we can. I'd expect that we'd be able to have something to adopt before the end of the year. We probably wouldn't implement anything until after the roundabout's complete and finished over there, so we can have time to assess the effects of the roundabout, because with all the construction over there, it's hard to analyze it, so that's where we're at with that. Also, we've been working with the Planning Commission on putting the revision to the sidewalk ordinance, because when we revised the zoning ordinance, the sidewalk ordinance kind of became out of date because it makes reference to the old zoning districts, which no longer exist. So we've added some language in there about the mechanisms for requirements of sidewalks, but as well as where sidewalks would be required. Instead of doing a straight zoning approach, we're kind of looking at it more of a transportation plan approach, where we show the areas on the transportation plan where sidewalks would be required, and those would be the areas that would dictate where they could go, and then we could adjust that document as things change. So we're at a point where the draft is almost ready, and I'm going to send it over to Tim Wachter for his legal review, so look forward to that. And then we'll be able to start the process of the adoption of that, because it'll be adoption of 2 ordinances. It'll be adoption of the sidewalk ordinance as well as the adoption of the official map. And then the last thing that I have, a long overdue, we got notification today from the Erie County Conservation District that our notice of termination for the NIFTY's permit for construction of our municipal building has been approved, so we can now, that permit is now closed out. 8 years too late, but nonetheless, it is done. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Supervisor Lee?
Yeah, thank everyone for coming, and I'd like to thank the Planning Commission too. Those people are volunteers and put in the time and effort because they care. So thank you.
Supervisor Davis?
Nothing crazy. Quick update. Picnic Canada volleyball / pickleball court. It will be coated next week, weather permitting. We got the asphalt down a couple weeks ago, and it had to take 30 days for it to cure, I guess, or whatever, before we put the color down. So the new volleyball court / pickleball court should be ready toward the end of September. Maybe the weather will hold out for a while, but that'll be nice. And there's 2 new basketball hoops, that we ordered. Should be in soon too. We did remove the old ones that were in the asphalt, and they were 50 years old and rotten away. So that'll be nice, and that's about it. Just keeping things going around the parks and looking good. Thank you.
Thanks. We're done paving for the season. We're going to be out crack sealing the roadways, ditching roadways. Believe it or not, starting to get the equipment ready for this winter, so it always takes a bit of a time to get everything pulled together there, but that's about it from my end. Public input, 3 minutes, please.
Yes, my name is Ed Troper, and I live at 1235 Ponderosa Drive. It's been very important to our neighborhood that the ordinance number 2022-02, which was adopted June 6th of 22 and effective 5 days later, and which also allowed existing short-term rentals to continue only if a license had been issued no later than September 1st, 2022, per the ordinance, and which reads as follows. Section 8, paragraph A of the ordinance, which reads as follows: an application for a short-term rental license shall be filed with the designated township official and a license issued prior to the use of the property as a short-term rental, except for an existing short-term rental use which shall apply for a license no later than September 1st, 2022, in the event an existing short-term rental has been booked for a period of September 1st through 2022 prior to the enactment of the ordinance. The owner applicant may operate for that period. However, the owner applicant may not entertain additional bookings after September 1st, 2022 until a license is issued for that unit. Please note the comment, except for existing short-term rental, shall apply for a license no later than September 1st, 2022. This means the applicant for an existing short-term rental must have received their license by September 1st of 2022, or they will now have to follow the new ordinance. On September 1st of 2022, a couple of the neighbors from our neighborhood were at the township office at 4 p.m. They checked with Tammy Cass to see if anyone had applied for a short-term rental license, and as of the close of the business day, they were informed by Tammy that no one had applied. The ordinance had stated that an existing short-term rental as of September 1st could continue, but no additional bookings could be entertained until a license was issued. As no license was issued by September 1st, 2022, I understand it to say that the short-term rentals such as at 1259 Ponderosa, 1571 Ponderosa, and 6540 Washington could not now be licensed for short-term rentals per the ordinance in residential zoned areas of Summit Township. As a result, the residents of the neighborhood expect the township will enforce the ordinance that is now in effect. If not, additional explanation must be forthcoming. Thank you.
Well, if I could address that?
Please.
The intent of that provision was to provide a cutoff date at which point everybody recognized that they needed to have a license until such time that they were, if they were going to book after that period. You continue your reading of that sentence to get down to the latter.
I read the whole thing.
I know. To get to the end of the provision, which says, however, the owner applicant may not entertain additional bookings after September 1st until a license is issued for the unit. The intent of that provision was that no one would be able to apply, that you would no longer be able to operate after September 1st without a license. We would not be legally able to stop them from operating.
Well,
but for, until they went out and had received that license.
Well, that's the intent, but the sound of it does not read that way to me anyway. And I don't think it reads that way to a lot of other people. If they didn't, they had almost 3 months to get their license prior to the 1st of September, and if they couldn't do it in that period of time, why should they be able to continue having a bed Airbnb when so many people don't want it? Intent doesn't mean anything to me. I think the actual application or applying for the license should be the controlling factor. Intent, what's intent? I could intent a lot of things, but.
What's the story? Is there a license?
So, may I?
Yep.
I believe Mrs. Leone came in at 4 o'clock on Thursday. Oh, I'm sorry.
They were there. People were there, and she was not there on Thursday by 4 o'clock. So don't say that. And then the following day, you and the, I'm sorry?
Mrs. Leone.
Yes?
Mrs. Leone was there at 4 o'clock.
And so was her husband.
And her husband, that's what I was saying.
That's what she
Okay,
said.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I apologize.
Were there at 4 o'clock. And they asked me specifically if Miss Maple applied for a license.
Yes,
And I said no.
correct.
However, Miss Maple, before she rented out her Airbnbs for the weekend, applied in the morning at 8 a.m. before she rented them out.
Of which day?
On the 2nd.
The 2nd, but that's not the
September
1st.
2nd, no. So I believe.
Yes, and you understand that you and the code enforcer were there with her that morning?
Yes, so she applied, and I did 2 short-term rental licenses the day before also with some other folks. And
Well, I don't
did
care
their
about the other
inspection.
folks, we're only concerning about Ponderosa Drive area.
And so, she applied, and then we scheduled an inspection with her that day.
After the fact.
After the fact.
What do you mean?
After September 1st, which was.
Yes, on
Yeah,
September
September
2nd.
2nd.
Well, how was that allowed if September 1st was the deadline?
Because it says, in the event that an existing short-term rental has been booked for a period of September 21st, 2022, prior to the enactment of the ordinance, the owner applicant may operate for that period. However, the owner applicant may not entertain additional bookings until after September 1st, until a license is issued for the unit. The license was issued.
You know what, I have a question.
Yeah, you're supposed to be for the people
Wait.
of the township, not just one person that he knows.
When Mrs. Leone asked you if she had been in for this license, you said we're working with her. Why are you working with her?
No, I never said that we were working with her. I answered the questions that she asked me.
And she
Was
said you
was
said
a
you were
license
working with
issued
her.
for Ms. Gable? I said, no. She came in, I believe, like
10 to 4.
10 to 4, and then she hung out in the lobby, and then she came back. She goes, I just want to make sure, did Ms. Gable apply for a license? And I said, for a short-term rental license. I said, no, she did not. No, she did not.
But then it's okay for her to come the 2nd of September when the deadline was supposed to be, so it doesn't matter when you come? Makes no sense to me.
What's the point of having the deadline?
Tim, if you could explain that.
Yeah,
one
so-
more time, please.
So I recognize what you're saying and how it was written. The intent of how it was written was to have a cutoff date, at which point people were no longer able to operate as short-term rentals without having a license. It specifically clarifies that. It's the whole purpose of the second sentence, is to clarify that, is that you're not going to be able to operate without a license after the September 1st, 2022 date,
But you can get a
unless you
license
have a
whenever you want.
license. So the ones that were operating were able to get that
And it
license.
doesn't say that. I don't care what the intent is, it doesn't say it.
I recognize that, and we're not here for debate.
Well,
You asked the question, I gave you an
if we're
answer.
talking legally, what does intent mean legally?
Legally, we're in a position where this township has gone out and put the most aggressive short-term rental license set of restrictions in that has been seen in northwestern Pennsylvania, if not throughout the entire Commonwealth. And we're doing our best that we can to put the township in a position where they're not going to get sued. And so we've done, the supervisor has done the extent, supervisors have done the extent of which they're able to go, in my legal opinion.
Well, like I said, there's going to probably be more discussion. Thank you.
Hi, Tammy Altsman, 6650 Ponderosa Drive. Is the code enforcement officer the same person that would enforce other things like, my question is about the dumpster? So did they look at that Friday when they were out there? Did they ask about
So
that?
we did touch base with her. I had an opportunity to touch base with her. And this is no excuse either, we were creating an application for short-term rentals. The license, that all is in-house. We created that. I'm sorry to get back to you the next day. We did go out and we checked her. We touched base with Robin Eagle regarding that dumpster. She indicated that she got a permit to build a residential accessory building. And so we allow a dumpster while she's building. And I said, well, you gave us till July 31st. What's going on here? And she goes, well, the supply has been on back order. However, we're going to change our mind. We're going to move that building and we're going to move the dumpster in 2 weeks. Like there's trusses there, I believe.
There's trusses there, yeah, but there's no construction, and it's not a construction dumpster.
Right. So 2 weeks and I'm done.
Okay.
So, I mean, if there's,
So 2 weeks, if it's not gone, then what?
oh, she's going to get a notice violation if it's a violation.
Okay, so 2 weeks from Friday, or 2 weeks from today, or? I'm just looking for a specific date so I know when to follow up.
So I talked with her when she got her license on Friday, the 2nd, September 2nd.
Okay. That's all I had.
Yes.
I just want to ask one other question. You went on
Could you come up and state your name? And address.
Karen Shaner, 6750 Ponderosa Drive. So she came on the 2nd, and all 13 things that are required for this license were done in one morning? There's 13 things under that section that are required, and all these things were completed so that she could get a license to operate?
Yeah, she checked all the boxes as far as inspections and requirements.
Just a joke. You guys are a joke.
Oh, yeah.
And you
See you later,
are going to be marked for reelection, believe me.
Yeah.
but can't read.
Is there anybody else?
Make this the last of your
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor?